This is CaneSport Inside the Lines on the Lads Football Network as we talk Miami Hurricanes football with Gary Furman. Gary, first loss of the season and the final score and really the game itself was a wake-up call for the players, but it happens when you go up against the best one of the, and I think it's a really good argument. Which team is the best football program in college football right now? I think you could have a serious argument that Clemson is more than Alabama. That's how big time Clemson is, and to expect Miami to just turn it on and play with the big boys. I guess maybe we were asking for a little bit too much. Maybe this will help them out. You would think it would if they play again in the ACC championship game.
Yeah, I just think in the bigger picture, it was great for Miami to go play a high-quality team and get an accurate, realistic gauge of where they are in building their program. To me, that's more important than anything. It's more important than the win-loss record this year. I'm not a believer in living in a delusional state. And the minute Miami wins a game or two, people are ready to start yelling, Miami's back, Miami's back.
Oh,
and that could play with your head a little bit as a football program and a football team. And, Miami's not back. This is the beginning of what hopefully will be a path back eventually. But, I think it's important that people stay grounded and inside the program, outside the program, understand that this is a work in progress. And as it pertains to Manny Diaz and his staff and the players, an understanding of how much work is left to be done, I think, is a good thing at this point.
Yes, and look, of course, the quarterback position is so important. And what happens after this season, all of a sudden you could be in a situation where you're like, well, we don't have a quarterback again. And
yeah, like we don't know. They got a young kid, Tyler Van Dyke, that everybody assumes is going to be the next quarterback. But when they put a second quarterback in the game right now, it's N'Kosi Perry, who obviously has been around for a while and has not been a success. So you're right, Greg. But I'll throw one other thing into the conversation. I'm not so sure that the degree of that failure on Saturday night didn't totally change the landscape and game plan of the Eric King. He can come back next year if he wants to.
Yeah, and, sure.
The NFL scouts, when they do evaluations, they look at the games against the real teams. They're not really interested in what the Eric King did against the bad Louisville defense. I mean, they'll take a quick peek, but they're going to study the Clemson film. And when they study the Clemson film, they're not going to see very much. And I think that the way that game played out and how much the Miami offense struggled could be a game changer in terms of the future of the offense. And I would not be surprised if the Eric King at the end of the year, when he balances his draft prospects with continuing his education, coming back for another season, we don't need to harp on this too much right now, but I'm not so sure that the Eric King might not decide I need to do this one more cycle.
It could happen. I mean, right now, you would think that he's not. There are already several quarterbacks already ahead of him in this class. That why don't I go in another year, and maybe in 2022, the draft, I could actually be one of those first round guys.
Well, that might be a little bit of a reach, but he has to.
Well, that's what he's going to think.
That might be what he'll think. But the reality is, right now, he's just trying to get drafted, and.
Sure.
More than likely at his size, he's looking at 5th, 6th, 7th round. I don't think anybody is going to harbor any illusions in the National Football League that this is a guy that they can make a franchise quarterback out of. I think at best at that level, he's a change of pace guy, maybe.
What is his size right now, Gary?
I mean, he's 5'9" at best.
Really? He's that small?
He's not more than 5'9".
That's danger territory then.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, we'll see what happens.
How about would he consider another position, do you think? Or would he have to? Well, 5'9", you might have to.
I mean, maybe slot receiver, but, if that was a realistic option, maybe he might have done that already. So, I don't know. I think it's a final chapter for him that's yet to be written.
Yeah,
but I'm not convinced that we're going to be closing the book on it in December. What I'm seeing is a kid that, if he were my son, my advice would be, De'Eric, you're a really good college quarterback. Your chances in the NFL are not great. Let's maximize your education. You're at the University of Miami. It's a great institution. Let's get you a graduate degree for free and finish, and let's get yourself set up for a great life ahead of you, so that if you can't play pro football, you've got something to fall back on. That's what I would be advising him if he were my son.
And if he does play pro football, and it is more than likely that he's going to have to change positions, and you want to continue to play quarterback, well, you could play quarterback for one more year right here in college. Stay at Miami, play one more year college football quarterback, and then you could make your switch into a different position in the NFL.
I look at a guy right here in town, Greg, Jakeem Grant, Miami Dolphins. Okay, a smaller type of guy that's a slot receiver. They're paying him, I think, a few $1 million a year or whatever. They can barely find a way to use him. This kid runs like 4.28 or something. Like, he's faster than De'Eric King, a more explosive athlete. They can barely find a way to use the guy. I don't know why he's even on the roster, quite frankly. I guess they use him as a kick returner, but there's not a lot of kicks returned in the NFL anymore.
No.
And so
they have the Navy kid too.
And they have the Navy kid now
and
too.
Perry, Perry was the one, the recent one, and that's who the Dolphins have, and they switched him to receiver. Yeah. So we haven't seen or heard from him yet, because it'll take him a little while. But King, I could see him being actually a better. I mean, Reynolds, I think he was a little smaller, I think, even than Perry, or the same size. But King seems to be a little bit more explosive to me.
I think reality for King is a number 3 quarterback, maybe a guy that can, be active on game day, that you can bring in, run a little wildcat with, that's a threat to be able to throw the ball. You could do some gimmick things with him, at the next level. But that's not going to inspire somebody to use a number 1 draft pick.
Not at 5'9".
I don't see it. I don't see that happening. I think he's looking at late rounds at best.
Yeah.
And like I said, if he were my kid, I'd be saying, De'Eric, let's focus on your education first.
Sure, absolutely.
And let's get that free graduate degree from the University of Miami.
And Lawrence, by the way, we'll throw in the fact that Trevor will be gone, and if you stay, you could take on Clemson without Trevor Lawrence next year, and we'll see how that goes.
But they got that other guy behind them. I don't.
Yeah, I know. They always have the other guy, but there's no way that Clemson is going to have another Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. Come on, that can't possibly happen.
This kid's really good. I mean,
I'm really good.
I'm not going to say he's going to be better than Trevor Lawrence, but this kid's got a lot of talent. So we'll see what happens. They'll have him for 2 years. So we'll see.
Let's talk about the key part of the game, really, the couple key things. And we talked about the penalties before, and it came up again. Matter of fact, Miami right now, they are ranking near the bottom, 68 out of 76 teams that are in the college football pool this year. That's where they rank as far as penalties. 37 penalties. That's 9.3 a game. And you're not going to talk. We didn't talk too much about it because they were winning. We talked about it, but we didn't harp on it. But when you play the really good football teams, these types of penalties are going to come back to haunt you. And they also just could not get off the field on third down.
Got to play more discipline, Greg. And, I'm watching the same thing this game after game with the safeties, getting their heads down and tackling with the crown of their helmet and getting targeting calls. Some of them, like, the one last week, I thought one of them was a little questionable on Keyshawn Smith. But the point is, now you guys have a target on your back. You have to really be clean with your tackling techniques and things like that. And those 15-yard penalties, they add up in a game, and you certainly can't afford them when you're playing a team like Clemson. The lining up a few inches off sides, that call, I don't know. I mean, maybe by the letter of the law, he was offsides. If he wasn't offsides by much. Maybe that was a little nitpicky. But, the point is they just got to tighten it up a lot and stop getting so many penalties, because they're not good enough to overcome them.
And then They get the block field goal for the touchdown at halftime. They're getting completely dominated. They only had 79 total yards, 56 on King's run. They come out in the second half. They get the big stop. Phillips tackling Lawrence. Bolden's hit. They fumble. And they get the ball at the Clemson 40. 3rd and 11. King is able to that's the one draw that actually worked. He broke a tackle, 15 yards, but unfortunately, just when everything started to look like maybe, the very next play, King throws the interception in the end zone and game over.
Yep. Well, I mean, yeah, that's the way it played out, but
and they didn't even deserve to be in that spot, but they were there, and that's a good thing to know that you still had. Those are some more teachable moments where, hey, you know what, guys, we still had a chance second half against Clemson, and we just couldn't make the big play.
Clemson's cornerbacks surprised me a little bit. I didn't realize they were as good as what they were. I thought they did a great job in the ball game, and Miami's receivers couldn't get separation, not at all. I mean, they only completed. Let's see, 4 passes to receivers on standard offense. They had the one on the gimmick play later in the game, but Mike Harley had 3 catches for 17 yards. D. Wiggins had 1 catch for 24, and that was it for wide receiver output for Miami, and that's not going to get it done against an average team, much less the best team in America. In Clemson,
they don't have the players.
They got to get more production out of the wide receivers, Greg, and that might involve playing some of the younger guys.
At some point, they're going to have to because of the fact, and we talked about it. The players that are out there right now they're just okay, and they're going to be able to win games against lesser teams with those receivers. But when you step up in competition, you need playmakers. You need guys, especially at this level. When you're taking on teams like Clemson, you need pro prospects is what you need. You don't need 1st or 2nd round guys, just even 5th or 6th round prospects. You need pro prospects. Miami isn't there yet. Maybe there are some guys with some of that talent that are sitting down, freshmen, waiting to get their turn, but you won't find out until they get an opportunity to play.
Well, Keyshawn Smith is a kid from the West Coast who they picked up late, who is going to go to Washington State and play for Mike Leach, who's flashed a little bit, and he caught the pass on the gimmick play on Saturday, and he's a kid that I think could start to factor in a little bit more possibly. Okay. Michael Redding is another true freshman from IMG who looks to me like he might be able to do some things this year. So we'll see. I mean, they're just not getting any production out of Wiggins and Mark Pope and Harley, and they're going to need production out of the receivers. I mean, it has to get better than what it's been. Or else they're going to get caught, 1 or 2 more times this season in a ACC that's not very strong.
Well, the other thing is Jordan, because he's one of, if not the best tight end of the country. He's got the shoulder injury. When did it happen? Do we know when it happened in the game? Because
it happened. I believe it was the 3rd quarter, and he's questionable for this week. But there's another example. Yes, he is without question probably the most elite performer for Miami on the offensive side of the ball, and you're playing your biggest game of the year. He had 3 catches for 31 yards. They didn't come into the game with a good enough game plan to get the ball into his hands. Yep. And it can't be the De'Ara King show every single play. I mean, they had a lot of designed runs in the plan for the week, and they I don't know if they got around to all of them, but yes, you have this talent in De'Ara King, who is a very good college quarterback, but it can't just be about him. You got to get these other guys involved. And when you're playing an elite opponent like Clemson, Brevin Jordan needs to get more than 3 touches. And so there are a lot of little issues, I think, up there that if they get a chance to play Clemson again at the end of the year, that they'll try to clean up. But like I said at the beginning of the show, Greg, I just personally think, I love measurement games. I think they're so important for programs. And, this was a good measurement for Miami to see where they are. Now they know where they need to get better. And it starts, that challenge starts Saturday against Pittsburgh, which won't have the athletes that Clemson has, but they do have a good enough defense that they're capable of putting together a solid game and challenging the Hurricanes a little bit in that regard, which I think is good because, now you can kind of gauge your progress week to week.
Yeah, because what you don't want to do is go on a 2-game losing streak, lose to a Pitt team that's a quality bowl team, but they're
Well,
they're back
they're gonna be fighting to be a bowl team
now. They
now
do, yes. It was
because
surprising.
after the last 2 games, they lost 1-point games the last 2 weeks to teams that they're probably better than.
Oh,
And
absolutely, they're better than Boston College and NC State. So that's
yes,
very disappointing that they lost those games. They started 3-0. They lose those games. You just said they led NC State 29-24, Pickett touchdown run with 1:44 left. They lost that game. Then against Boston College on the road, they get a 58-yard field goal by Alex Kessman with 40 seconds left. They end up going to overtime after the field goal. Boston College scores a touchdown. Pitts comes down, scores a touchdown, and Kessman missed the extra point.
unbelievable. So they go from making a 58-yard field goal to missing an extra point.
Yes. So that's the team that's coming into town after losing games like that. And Pickett is the second leading rusher on the team, which is not a good thing. He's banged up right now with a banged up ankle. They say he's questionable, but I think we all get the feeling he's going to play.
Yeah, they're in a hurt locker if he doesn't play, and they still have Clemson and Notre Dame on the schedule. This is a big game for Pitt. If they lose this game, their season is really headed off in the wrong direction, and I gotta believe that Pickett's going to be out there.
As far as you mentioned their defense, they have several pro prospects on defense. They have an explosive senior edge rusher, Patrick Jones. He already has 7 sacks this season. He had 8.5 of all last year, including 4 forced fumbles. And Rashad Weaver has 4.5 sacks. So both Jones and Weaver along the defensive line are both top line pro prospects, pass rushing prospects on the D line. And safety Paris Ford might be the best safety in the entire nation. He has 2 interceptions, 31 tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss. He led the team last year with 97 tackles, 3 forced fumbles, and 3 interceptions. And also,
wow, you feel that strong about him?
Oh,
huh?
yeah, Paris Ford,
best in the nation.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, Paris Ford is a major talent, and he's off to a great start again this year. He's definitely one of the best in the ACC, and I think from what I've already seen, safety is a position you don't really see a lot of. You have to be really special. Now, I don't know if he's special, but just when I'm ranking him against the safeties coming out this year, I think he's definitely one of the top players. Damar Hamlin is another quality safety, and center Jimmy Morrissey is another player that has a draftable grade on him. Pitt 0-5-1 against the spread in their last 6 ACC games. So that's a good trend for
0-5-1.
0-5-1 against the spread in their last 6 ACC games.
That would point to a big Miami victory, right?
You would hope so. And Miami has beaten Pitt the last 2 years straight up and against the spread after the upset in 2017 when Pickett was a freshman and Miami was 10-0. And I don't have to remind you guys. Miami 4-1 straight up and against the spread their last 5 versus Pitt. So there are some other ones that trend their way.
Miami fans will be happy to hear that.
Yes.
And, those are some pretty positive trends.
Yes. Now, last week, we talked about Miami 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 with rest. So keep that in mind. They're now 0-5 against the spread. Their last 5 with rest.
We talked to Manny Diaz about that this week, Greg. And Manny kind of reacted how I would react. I think that one's totally irrelevant. I don't think open weeks have anything to do with it. I think it's who you're playing on the open week. And they were playing Clemson. They didn't play well. They got beat. Manny said that he didn't think that there was relevance there, and I would have to tend to agree with him. Sometimes you just get these fluky things. Like, I don't think there's any lack of preparation or anything during a 2-week break. Like, obviously it gives them extra time to prepare for the game.
As far as Miami being the favorite, though, they are 3-0 still, straight up and against the spread as a favorite this year. So they lost the Clemson game as the only dog of the season, but they still are undefeated as far as that is concerned as a favorite. Now, I'm going to give you the one really bad trend for Miami.
Yeah.
0-10 against the spread in their last 10 as a favorite of 3 or more. after a game that they scored less than 14 points.
Wow. They go that deep into these things, huh?
Oh, they go much deeper.
That's an interesting stat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you deal with these gambling guys quite a bit. How do they decide what trends are applicable? Like, I don't like.
Well, they all are. It's just up to every handicapper has their own formula. And all this information provides every handicapper with is the information they could do whatever they want to do with it. Some will say,
Right.
"Hey, here are some trends that I don't care about. They don't mean nothing to me. Every time I use them, it doesn't matter. I don't care." And then others will go, "Man, I'm a trend guy. I go 100% on trends, and I'm just going to trend my way to victory." So it
So
just all depends.
what was the point total on that last one? Was it, did you
Uh,
say?
You mean the one that they're 0-10?
Yeah.
Whenever they have scored 14 points or less in the previous game, but they have to be a 3-point favorite or more in this game.
Okay, well, they got 17 last week, so I guess that would wipe that one out, right?
What was that?
They had 17 against Clemson, so I guess that would wipe that. It would wipe that trend out, right?
Oh, that's right. What was the score in the game?
42-17.
Okay. I was looking at, you know what? That was probably because, probably what it was is I knew that I didn't even realize it from that standpoint because I was looking at I quickly typed up. I was like, hey, what was the score of the game again? As I was going over my trends. And I went ahead and I put Miami Clemson score and it popped up on there. The first score that popped up was 38-3. And I wasn't even thinking of it because I didn't even remember. Of course, I knew Miami scored a touchdown, but I wasn't even thinking. I was just like, hey, it says 38-3, so I guess it was 38-3. And
look, 17's close to 14. I think
no, it doesn't count though.
I think the bottom line,
but those don't count though, Gary. That's the thing is they don't count.
No, I know. We won't use it in our handicapping, so to speak. But like I think the point of that trend is that if you only score 14 points in the previous game, in this case 17, you're struggling a little bit on offense, and it carries over to the next game. I'm sure that's the idea behind the trend. Hopefully that's not the case for Miami, although they are going against a very good Pitt defense.
Yeah, but the good news is that I was really surprised, as good as this Pitt defense is. Narduzzi's a defensive guy. They still gave up a ton of points to North Carolina State and Boston College.
Stunning.
Those teams do not have the offensive firepower that Miami has.
Well, Boston College is better than you think. Boston College is one of those teams that's kind of surprising people a little bit this year. And, they're very well coached. And they're a little bit better than you think. And they've got some very good offensive minds in that program working on the game plans every week. And, I think they're one of those teams that's sneaky. NC State is the real shocker to me. They weren't expected to be very good, but also very well coached. And I think that they're overachieving a little bit so far.
Yeah, it's still, I think no matter what, I think it's a good sign for Miami. I don't know. This is, if you take a look at the previous scores in this rivalry, last year was a 4-point cushion, but that was at Pitt. The last time they played at home, they beat them 24-3. I don't know. I think that if Miami doesn't, feel the hangover of the game, whether it's confidence is the thing I'm the most curious about, and you want Jordan to play. Jordan needs to play, and you want to, and maybe getting off to a good start is going to be extremely important for Miami to feel comfortable in the fourth quarter in this game. I think if somehow they come out, they make a couple of sloppy plays, a penalty gives up a first down, oh, here we go again, that kind of stuff, it could be a 4-quarter football game.
Yeah, it's going to be a battle of wills, so to speak. Pitt needs to keep it low scoring, and Miami obviously wants to get its offense back going again. So it'll be interesting to see if Pitt's able to stop Miami. Before Clemson, we felt pretty good about the Miami offense. They were doing really good things. So it was kind of shocking to see them be so inept, so to speak, against Clemson, even acknowledging the quality of Clemson's defense. So I expect Miami's offense to wake up and do much better in this game, but is it a guarantee? No, it's not a guarantee. And when you start throwing those trends around that show the teams that struggle one week on offense, that Miami has not typically been able to get on track the next week, that throws it a little bit more into question.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing too is we know that three of the top programs, if you rank the top three programs over the last 4 years in college football, you'd probably go not in any particular order, but you'd probably go Clemson, Alabama, and Georgia. And those are the three teams that are just
maybe Ohio State you would throw in there.
Yeah, they're just not playing right now. So, but yeah, out of the teams that are playing, and those are the teams that they just you're thinking, even like Georgia, you go, man, they lost a lot of guys. Alabama, they've lost a lot of guys. But what are they? Yeah. Clemson lost a lot of guys. But what are they doing? They just go out there and they just keep killing teams.
Because they're recruiting so well.
Yeah, they recruit so well. They've got their program already running and churning, and Miami hasn't. They're not at that stage yet.
No, but you watch teams like LSU this year, and you see how fleeting success can be. It's you got to hit every year in recruiting. Recruiting to me is the key.
I really have to think that the off-season issues has definitely impacted LSU, no question. And look, they've lost their star defensive coordinator, which is a huge deal, and they lost a ton of talent,
and Joe Brady they lost.
Yeah, and Brady. But the defense has been so bad, and I think we're seeing it in the NFL. There's definitely issues in the NFL with defense this year, and nobody's going to convince me that it's because of anything else other than the COVID situation. And I even said this before the season began. I thought that, and I didn't necessarily compute it with defense, but I think that's what we're seeing, is that when you don't have the crowds in the stadium, you get a lot of times where you don't know which players are going to give it 100%, especially when things aren't going well for them. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing that a lot in the NFL. I think that the defenses are just not there. You can say what you want about nobody's in the stands. Hey, I know people are watching on TV, but I'm in this game. I'm not on television listening to this fake crowd noise. There's no crowd noise here. It's hard for me to get in. Defense is fueled by the crowd, and there are no crowds in college or the NFL, and I think that's why we're seeing so much offense in the sport of football, both in the pros and the college. And LSU, there's a bunch of reasons there, and definitely you got the hangover of winning a national championship.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
But yeah, Ed Orgeron does a really good job of recruiting, but he's not at the level of he recruited so well, but he had all of his guys set up for that 1 year run, and they capitalized. And you have to capitalize when all your top prospects are all going to be leaving that year, and he did a great job of capitalizing it. But
and cashed in big,
and absolutely did that. No question about it. All right, so what's next week? Miami and who?
Virginia. So
is that a regular Saturday game?
Yeah. Yep. It'll be a Saturday game, and Virginia's kind of tricky. We'll talk more about them next week, but they actually gave Clemson a better game than Miami did, but very similar to Pitt. Like, they're just not winning the games that you would think that they would win. So we'll see. We'll worry about them next week. I think Miami's right now needs to take care of business against Pitt, get their season back on track, and listen, they should be favored in every game left this year. Probably, with the only exception might be the road trip to Virginia Tech. So we'll see how that plays out. But
yeah, Virginia Tech's got a good team. Yeah,
they
don't play North Carolina, Miami.
They do, but at the end of the year at home. So
that could be that's a good one.
That'll be an interesting game, no doubt. But look, they're set up to have a really good season this year, and they just gotta keep their head down. They got their barometer against Clemson. Now they know where they stand, and just keep working and trying to get better.
Yeah, very important to win a game like this. These are the winnable games. When you're a 10-point favorite, you have to take advantage of those games. And hopefully Jordan's healthy. We'll see how that works out. Next week it's on to Virginia. So, Gary, appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you next Wednesday.
All righty, Greg. Always a pleasure.